Hey guys, so I've turned on the camera again after a long and complicated ordeal involving me recording this already, realizing that the video quality was bad because it was on my phone and because the light was poor in here. So I uploaded the footage to edit it, and when I started editing it, the footage wasn't good quality, would have been grainy, so I made the decision that I would go to the studio to record this, which I did today. But there's a connector required for my lapel mic in the studio, which I left here. So I came back, and I came back with a light from the studio. So I'm lit up now, and hopefully it's looking a little bit better. Today's video is on a really basic concept that I've noticed being an issue with students, especially during lockdown. You know, people being stuck at home, not being able to get into their normal routine. The routine is completely upended. They find themselves at home all day long. And whereas before, maybe we found difficulty finding time to be at home and to practice drums, what I'm noticing now is it's less about time, finding the space in your schedule, and it's more about finding the mental space to be able to sit down and say, I'm gonna practice for 30 to 45 minutes, which is hard to face. Especially if you're struggling on your practices, especially if your practice is finding it hard to make progress. Maybe you're plateauing in your abilities, and maybe you're just struggling with the new limitations that are now in place for people. The lack of physical lessons. You can't go to your lesson, you have to do it online. Although online lessons are fantastic and they're infinitely better than no lessons, a lot of people prefer learning in person, and it is having an effect. And the effect it's having is people are struggling to get to their kit and practice, and I think it's a headspace thing. So what I've suggested to some of my students this week, and what I'm suggesting to you, is to try something called micro practicing. So what is micro practicing? First of all, it's nothing, I made it up. But micro practicing, the definition of my understanding of what I've named, isn't to sit down for 30 minutes or to 45 minutes to practice. It's to sit down with the intention of playing through a section. Okay, a section might be 4 bars, it might be 16 bars, but just an area that you're having trouble with, the part that you're currently struggling with. And if you can sit down and focus on it for 2 minutes, maybe that means you get to play through twice, maybe it means 4 times, but 2 minutes of focused practice is what I would call a micro practice. Now, are you going to learn how to play it in 2 minutes? No, you're not. Okay, but what you are going to do is you're going to recall, you're going to remember how it's done. Okay, now the way your brain works with memory, in a nutshell, is you need to remember something a number of times before your brain decides this is important information. They have continued to remember it, so maybe I should hold on to it in long-term memory, or, you know, not just throw it away. So when explaining how learning works with my students, I will often use a library as an example. So if you take your brain as the librarian, they have to process and hold all this information that your eyes and your nose and your mouth and your ears takes in. And if you were to measure that information, it's terabytes. It's just all the time flowing in. And your brain is very responsible for taking that information, analysing it, deciding what was important information, what should be retained and what should be forgot. And we can't ask our brain to remember something. It would be great if we could. We could just say, hey brain, I've got an exam tomorrow and all this stuff's going to be on it. If you could just remember this for a day, that would be sweet. You know, unless you've got a photographic memory, you just can't depend on your brain holding on to everything. You can trick your brain into remembering stuff, and that is simply by asking it about it, recalling it. So for that 2-minute practice, you're in essence walking up to the library desk, asking about a book have you got this book? And the librarian will find it. Yes, here it is, and hand it to you. So that's you remembering the information. And then you go away. An hour later, you come back in. You ask about the book again. Have you got that book? And the librarian's like, what did you hear an hour ago? Yeah, here it is. You look at the book, close it, hand it back to the librarian. Thank you very much. And an hour later, you come back in. And the librarian's like, hold on a second. You're after this, aren't you? And that's your brain starting to remember. Okay? Now, this is not a substitute for sitting down and practicing properly for 30 to 45 minutes. It is not. Okay? But as I said about online lessons, it is far superior to no practice. So, micro practices. If you sit down for 2 minutes, you can do anything for 2 minutes. Some people can hold their breath for 2 minutes. I can't. I will die. But most people are better at holding their breath than me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But a lot of people will struggle with a 45-minute practice. But for 2 minutes, they can focus properly. You can remember the pattern that you're trying to learn, the pattern that's causing you trouble. You can run through it twice, nice and slow, remembering the pattern, and then leave it for an hour or two. It does require that you keep coming back, so you'll probably want 4 visits in the day. 4 2-minute practices is only 8 minutes of practice versus your 35, 40-minute practice. It's tiny, but it's very effective at making that information stay in your head. So what I'm trying to say to you is, if you're doing great, you're having no issues practicing, then ignore what I'm saying. But if you're struggling, and if coronavirus is causing you to lose your routine as you had it, you don't have contact with the same people you used to have contact with, you don't have the same schedule you used to have, and you're finding it hard to make progress or to bring yourself to the kit, then a micro practice might be the solution for you. And it might not even need to be a long-term solution. Within a week, what you'll find is the wall that you've built up between you and the kit with regard to your practice will be broken down by the fact that you keep coming back and having a good experience. 2 minutes will lead to a good experience, whereas a 45-minute practice could lead to you, by the end of it, really struggling and maybe throwing the sticks in the corner and saying, you know what, I really shouldn't have done that. It's very rare that someone will go to have a practice and not be happy about the fact that they went and practiced. But maybe you just need help getting back into your practice schedule, and micro practices might be the way. So that is the extent of what I wanted to talk about today. There's going to be nothing played. That was it, and I hope that it makes sense. I hope that the way I explained it makes sense to you. This method of learning, this recall method, works for everything. So if you're doing some exams in college at the moment and you have to remember some lines of code, you have to remember some theorems or theories, write them down and look at them, and then put them down and keep coming back and keep recalling the information, basically asking your brain, what was that thing we did? And eventually your brain will just go, enough, I remember it, it's here, there, I have it right here. The information won't get thrown away. But what will happen with something that you don't come back to regularly, like if you take 3 days between practices like I do sometimes, when you finally go to play, your brain's like, I don't know what you're talking about, that information isn't in here anywhere, I threw that away 2 days ago because you didn't ask about it. So by referencing and recalling, you can make that information stay right at the front, and your brain will really help you out. I hope this helps. I hope the lighting's good. It looks good on screen anyway, so I brought a light box home, stuck it up in the corner. Thanks for watching as always, guys, and yeah, I'll see you soon, whenever. Bye.